All right, guys. Well, good to see you all here. Happy to have you again for our last official session of our course. And like I said, I was really glad to see some of you guys in my office hours over the past 2 weeks. Today, we're going to talk about, or I guess I'm going to talk about some lessons learned from past projects. I got a lot of feedback from a lot of you that it's really helpful to hear kind of what has been done already and what those experiences were like. So I wanted to kind of just highlight some of the lessons learned that we have experienced. And I also want to hear from you on how your project is coming along, how your project planning is going. And I want to give everybody a chance to share their ideas and some feedback. So we're going to have everybody talk about where their project stands now, and everybody share a little bit from their ideas or questions that they have. Then we'll hear from Karina on various Arizona state initiatives and kind of how you might think about aligning your projects with those. And we'll have some time to work in breakout rooms just to kind of continue work from previous sections or get into the next section or whatever you need to do with your groups or individually to make more progress. And then we'll wrap it up. Sound good? Okay. So just a reminder, these are the completion requirements for our course. There are 3 levels of completion. The first is achievement, then there's leader, and then there's innovator. So the achievement level is just attending our synchronous sessions and completing the activities in the Moodle. So that's the e-learning, World Education e-learning website where you guys have been responding to discussions and so forth. And then there's the leader. That would be completing your project planning workbook. So I know you guys have made tons of progress in the workbooks, which is awesome. I think some of you may be working in a copy of a workbook that I don't have access to. So if you have been doing work in your workbook and haven't been getting comments from me, that means I'm not seeing the work that you're doing. So as a reminder, I posted group workbooks in the group discussion forums. If you're unsure if I'm seeing yours or not, just reach out to me and we'll work it out. And let's just make sure I have a link to wherever you're doing that work so that you can get your badge. And then finally, there's the innovator badge, which would be the implementation or execution of your actual project that you've been planning. The first 2, the due date will be March 11th. So Friday, March 11th is when we'll wrap up all of the Moodle activities and all of the workbook. For the last one, there's really no set due date. It would be depending on how things go for you, when you're recruiting, when you're planning to do your project and all of that. So we'll just stay in touch and we'll be happy to issue those badges when you have implemented your project. So as a reminder, we're wrapping up sections 3 and 4. Please do complete the exit tickets. There are only like 3 questions in the exit tickets, and those are posted in the Moodle course. All right, lessons learned. So some of the things that we have learned over time of doing EdTech Makerspace projects, and hopefully these will kind of help you as you're planning yours. The first one I wanted to start with, this is back a concept from section 1, reaching out to content providers. So as you're thinking about the content that you'll use, have you contacted anyone to see what their thoughts or ideas are on what you're doing with the content? So this example comes from the ESL Story Banks project that I did with Maryland TESOL. So back in, I guess it was just last year, feels like 10 years ago because of this pandemic, but just last year, I was an ESOL instructor and I volunteered for our Maryland TESOL Association here in Maryland. So I wanted to do an EdTech Makerspace project, and I had a colleague, Xavier Munoz, who had this great idea around the Literacy Minnesota ESL Story Banks. So what you're seeing on my slide here is a page from the ESL Story Banks and what we wanted to create. So we had these story banks that had reading passages and phonics practice and all of this great content. And we wanted to create interactive Jamboard activities using the ESL Story Banks. So here we actually had 2 content providers. The first was Literacy Minnesota, who created the original ESL Story Banks. And the second is called the Color Vowel Chart or Color Vowel English Language Training Solutions. Really curious to know if any of you have ever heard of the Color Vowel Chart. So just if you guys have, let me know in the chat box. Okay. So the color vowel chart we wanted to use as a background in our Jamboard activities. So if you're familiar, okay, Jan is familiar. It's a way of helping learners map out the sounds of the vowels in English. And so we have, you can see this little teacup. It would be green T-E, green T-E, week, green T-E. If you've been trained, you know, this might look crazy otherwise, but you know what I'm doing. So it's a way of training them in the sounds of the vowels. And we wanted to use it as the background to a Jamboard, but it is licensed material. So you can't just put the color vowel chart anywhere or print it out anywhere. You actually have to be trained in using it in order to use it and have it and implement it in instruction. So we reached out to both Literacy Minnesota and the Color Vowel Chart folks to see where there were opportunities for collaboration and what level of permission we had to use their content. Some of the things that we gained out of that partnership were, with Literacy Minnesota, they gave us access to the editable documents. So what we had were PDFs. They actually gave us the Google Docs to go in and add links to the Jamboards, right? So that was crucial because then once we get the links in there, everyone who goes to the ESL story banks can see the Jamboards too. And so it's just a way of making those more visible. We also just got their permission to adapt the resource. And it was very important that they gave us the information that the images that they had used in their PDFs, they may not actually have rights to. And so that helped us be very careful about using the images from their PDFs, and we didn't use them because we weren't sure whose they actually were. So some key information and resources came out of that partnership. And then with the Color Vowel Chart, they actually offered to all of our EdTech makers a free training and certification in the Color Vowel Chart. So that was over a $70 value. It was obviously a big draw to anyone participating, but it also gave them the assurance that as people are creating Jamboards with the Color Vowel Chart, they also know kind of what they're doing so that they can use the Color Vowel Chart jams. Another caveat to that was that we had to make sure that some of the Jamboards didn't have the Color Vowel Chart so that anyone who's not trained in the Color Vowel Chart had something to use too, right? If we're thinking about that reusability beyond just the scope of the project. They also shared logos and what their preferences were for attribution within the Jamboards. They shared guidelines around where we could house these. They gave us permission to put them in Wakelets and make them publicly accessible, but with the language that they wanted on them and how we could promote them. And then finally, they actually promoted Marilyn Teasall on their partner page. So it was a great opportunity to get our work out there. So reaching out to the content partners is you know, it's not to say that you'll always get these results, but I find that more often than not, people want to collaborate because they want their content out there. That's why they created it in the first place. So it's always worth at least breaking the ice and saying, hey, we're doing this. And is there any opportunity for us to partner with you or to collaborate with you? Okay, great. Catching up on the chat. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, anyone who is using for curation, right? It's not as necessary because you're really taking links and organizing them. And there are so many content providers in a curation project that maybe it's not worth it, or maybe there are some bigger ones and some key ones that you do want to reach out to and partner with. But definitely if you're taking the material and adapting it or changing it in any way, I think it's really important. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I'll just add for curation, it is worth asking though, because they may already have done it. I have a few things where I went through and was doing it myself and then like stumbled across the, oh, they already aligned this to their content to this thing, which was the Common Core State Standards. So like asking even those types of questions, if there's resources you're interested in aligning, is worth just doing some digging. But yeah, people want their stuff promoted. So that's part of what the Makerspace is. And so these are great results. Like, it was really exciting to see all of the kind of partnerships that came out from this project.
Yeah, and I want to remind and highlight to everyone that this was before I worked with World Ed and had these connections. And so I think at that time it was a little intimidating to me to even open up the conversations, but I relied on some other people to make connections. And then in some cases, like with Color Value Chart, we just reached right out and said, hey, what can we do? And so I just want to encourage you that people will be glad to hear from you and excited to hear about your projects. Okay, next lesson learned. This is a recent one from our Staying Healthy EdTech Makerspace that we're doing. Again, we're creating Jamboards in that makerspace. We have a Jamboard problem, Jeff and I do. But what we found was that we had trained everyone how to set a background in Jamboard. And we told them, write your instructions, write your titles, and then set them as the background so students can't move them around. Well, we started looking over them and realizing that if there were any typos or mistakes, we weren't going to be able to fix anything in the Jamboards because they had those images set to their backgrounds. So we had to kind of go back and adjust some of our guidance and checklists around what to do to create their Jamboards. So this is a good lesson learned to remember to test everything that you're doing. Make sure that you go through the process from a maker's perspective and kind of think through what it's going to look like when that evaluation and review comes into play. And then check in often. So kind of make sure you have tabs on what people are doing. If we hadn't gone and looked at the Jamboards soon after they were being created, then it would have been way down the road that we realized, oh my gosh, we can't edit these backgrounds and we have some mistakes in here. And of course, just be flexible and be ready to pivot at any point in your project when things are going astray. Marlena says, this reminds me to save copies. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, you have to save them either as like another frame in a folder, or if you do them in slides, you could have them as editable slides. But yeah, gotta be careful with that.
And I've seen people recommend for Jamboards, just because the dimensions can be annoying, like make your background in a Jamboard and then screenshot that to put in a new. So I'm thinking I'll just have a master or a folder of Jamboards that are like my master copies that are movable, and then have the screenshots to put into my like working active Jamboards.
Yeah, exactly. Like I've created a Jamboard and I call it editable, and then I will save the images and create in a different Jamboard the one with the backgrounds. And so I have one that I can tweak and then one that people can use without moving everything around.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Fun lesson learned. And then I wanted to share this one as well. This is from the same project I mentioned originally, the ESL story banks. And it's about a project management team. So in this project in particular, it was done through Maryland TESOL, their association. And so some of the other Maryland TESOL volunteers wanted to be a part of the spring event, which was this EdTech Makerspace project. Well, they had never been a part of an EdTech Makerspace project. And I think as we're all learning here, it's kind of hard to wrap your mind around when you're on the outside looking in and you haven't done it and gotten your hands into it before. So some tips at building a project management team and collaborating with the team, whether they've done EdTech Makerspace or not. First of all, use them to test the processes. I think that's a great way to use people who are not, maybe not ed tech savvy, or maybe not familiar with doing PD, or maybe not totally comfortable with this scale of a project. I think those members of your team are great as giving you feedback to, okay, this makes sense to me and I see I could follow this process, but this is not clear to me, and you're speaking your own language and we need to make it something that I can understand, right? So those people were very helpful to me in that. and they looked over the guides, the resource trackers, the checklist to kind of see if everything made sense, and if when we included all the makers in this, if it was going to be something that they could follow easily and wasn't too much of a strain. And then the other benefit to having a diverse team to work with when you're creating, planning the project is we had a lot of programs involved. So like the 5 of us were all in different organizations. Well, 2 of us were in the same one, but mostly in different organizations. So we had a diverse set of people to recruit from, which was really cool for our project. So getting people involved from other programs might be something that helps spread the word about your project. And then leverage everyone's expertise. So as we're planning, I kind of was able to identify different areas of expertise that everyone could contribute to the project. One of the girls, she was in grad school, and she was a big techie. In fact, she had like worked with Google before or something. And so she did the Wakelet training and did all the Wakelet guides and everything for our project. Somebody else did the Jamboard training and did all the Jamboard guides because they were Jamboard savvy. Someone else was just a participant manager. So she managed our email that we had and was tracking the progress of all the participants. Someone else had office hours. So she was just a support person. She was kind of going through the process with all of the makers and was able to help them, answer questions and support them along the way. So there are plenty of ways, if you have a diverse team of project managers, to work together, and I think it's to the benefit of the project. Okay, another lesson learned when it comes to evaluating and sharing resources. We got a lot of activity in the chat, so I'm not going to catch up on that now, but great. Build evaluation and feedback into project plans to happen during the project. So evaluating and sharing is something you're going to get into in section 5, and you'll see more examples of kind of some lessons learned along the way. But I think one really important one is to, as people are making things, curating things, creating things in your project, make sure that you are also kind of tracking that, checking in, and giving feedback so that they really get to that in the moment feedback of, okay, you've created a Google form. I think this was actually something that came up in the reading skills for today's adults makerspace, but we had these stories and people were creating Google forms, and some were not assigning point values or setting the correct answer, right? So getting that feedback in that moment was something that helped them actually develop their skills in making Google forms so that they could go on and make more that were excellent for their students and worked well for them. We could have gone in and just made those changes ourselves and carried on, but it was a key part of their training and helping them get comfortable with it. Yeah. Okay, and then Jeff added, if they're making multiple of a thing, check the first one before setting them loose. Yeah, good advice. And then putting the resources in a central location. This is a lesson learned that I had with the ESL story banks. They are still not very centralized. It takes 2 different Wakelet links, which I've tried to share. But in terms of going to Literacy Minnesota and getting to the Jamboard activities through the original ESL story banks, you can't do that right now. And so it's something to really think about before you come up with your end product, right? Is where is it going to be shared so that it's really easy for people to find. And I'm still in the process of making that change with the ESL story banks so that more people can use them. And then of course, always make a plan to showcase your work and celebrate it so that more people know about what you've created, they can use it, and they know how to use it, but also just as a sense of huzzah to you for having planned this project and to the makers for participating and now having something that they can use in their classes. Okay, so those are some lessons learned from our projects, and I'd like to get now into sharing and hearing more about your projects. Before I move on though, do you guys have any questions about some of those lessons learned? Okay, yeah, Jana's raising her hand. Go ahead, Jana.
Yeah, I tried to raise my hand and then I ended up clapping instead. So wait, can you guys hear me okay? Because I have
Yeah,
a
you're
different
good.
headset on. Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
So wait, so you weren't clapping for me? Just want to clarify.
oh, I mean, I was. I absolutely was. That was 100% applause. So one thing that, and don't hate me, Jeff, for this, but I think it's important to also include somewhere very visible. If you find a mistake in this material as a user, who do we contact? Because I found something, one of the Marshall Adult Ed stories, and the links wasn't working. Like I went to the master document and I was copying the link and it didn't work. And I was like, do I send this to Jeff? What do I do? Like, is he still the point person for this? I'll do it later. And I have no idea which story it is now. That's why I said, don't hate me for this, Jeff, because there's a whole row of them that, and I can't even remember exactly what went wrong. But anyway.
Yeah, that's
that,
great.
Like
so
stuck in my mind, like, yeah, if there's something wrong, then who's the person to contact and how's the best way to let you know, the project organizer?
Yeah.
And Jeff, I'm sure that you have that info somewhere. I just.
No, we don't actually. So, I mean, that's a really good point that should be on that sheet. So yeah, we'll add it. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people here are planning to include like some instructional, because some guidance around how to use what they're creating. So that's a perfect place just to put in the footer, you know, if you find any issues, contact, and then you put Jeff's email for everything. No, just kidding. All right, so any other questions about some of those lessons learned? Okay, all right, I'm gonna move on.
Sorry, I have a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So with those emails, I already emailed Jeff to ask about contacts, but when I'm contacting Reading for Healthcare Workers, for instance, do you have any insight to share, because you, Rachel, did this and you had to go through the same experience, aside from getting the right contacts to reach out to? Do you have any insight or advice for kind of that initial contact and providing info about our project, but also kind of laying out expectations? Because I'm not certain what, I mean, I know a little bit, but knowing those expectations so that I'm not just sending an email saying, can I use your things? But what do I want from you?
Yeah, that's great. That's a good thought. So I would say, first of all, be sure to communicate what need you're filling, why this is important, that you're doing this project or adapting their resources, without telling them that their resources are inadequate, you know. So this is such a great resource. I really want to make it available to this audience, or I really want teachers to be able to do XYZ with it. So first, you know, why are you doing the project, and what is the benefit to it? And then I think also having something actionable for them. So rather than just, can I use this, more of a what can I do with this? What is the best way to give you guys credit for this original work that you've done? And maybe do you have time to meet and to discuss what I'm doing in my project, and what are some ways that we can collaborate? Jeff, do you have anything to add to that? Like what to include in that first breaking of the ice?
Yeah, I mean, it really is a matter. It's not about that you love their resource and you want to actually consider ways. I mean, with the reading skills for today's adults, we said we were like testing this whole process, but it was the fact that, you know, we wanted more mobile friendly activities for learners, because, you know, that I mean, it's online, but there were so many more things that could be done. It was the midst of the pandemic. And as Rachel said, yes, set up a time to collaborate, because I mean, we actually had them present at our first session with the teachers. We actually, in many ways, were doing QA because they were actually revising their site. And so as we were noticing errors on like this link is wrong, so it really became very collaborative by way of setting up that initial conversation, and we mutually benefited from the project. And we're presenting at co-ed together. because now that curriculum it's in Arizona, it's approved for TVM, it's approved in South Carolina for TVM, which was not the case before. So who knows where it'll lead, but I mean, at the start, it's really about, we just want to expand and or augment the way in which your resource can be used within adult education. And that's the other thing is like, I mean, two of your, I know the reading skills for healthcare workers, that's obviously geared towards adult education. With the slower to build graphs, I know that's not necessarily, but I mean, that's a lead in right there, is that, it's such an important skill that adults, don't have. And so we want to help you expand your resource within adult education is always a good thing as well.
Yeah, and I'll say I met a lot of hesitancy from the color vowel chart folks, just because it is a commercial product and they really want people to know how to use it before they start. It's not obvious when you see a color vowel chart what you're supposed to do with it. So I understand they want people to be trained in it. And so really their initial reaction was, we don't think this is a good idea. And so it took that mutual benefit piece. What can we do that will make you excited about it? And that's when we got to the point of, oh, you want people trained in it. Well, why don't we incorporate the training? Is there anything we can do to incorporate the training? And then they thought, oh, actually, we have an online course, so we could make that available to your participants. And then it ended up being a huge benefit to our project because participants wanted that training in addition to the other things we were doing. So, be prepared for anything like that and be ready to look for ways that it can really benefit both parties and to collaborate with people.
That's extremely helpful. Thank you both.
Sure. Jana, is your hand still up or is it from before? Okay. All right, great. All right.
Or are you clapping now? Are you clapping?
She's still not clapping, Okay. All right. So let's take some time to share with one another and give each other some feedback. I think we've got everybody here. That's great. So Jeff introduced me to this concept of critical friends recently, and I did a little bit of digging. It's something from the 80s, so I wasn't so familiar with it. But it's an approach that comes from educational leadership, and I found it actually quite interesting. So today we're going to do project updates with our critical friends, and we'll all act as critical friends during these updates. And what does that mean? What is a critical friend? A critical friend is a trusted person and an advocate for the success of another person's work. So I want to make sure we're focusing on that when we're asking questions and giving feedback, that we trust one another and we're all hoping for great successes in each other's projects. And what does a critical friend do? And what will we be doing today when we're asking questions and giving feedback? First, we'll take time to fully understand the context of your project and the outcomes that you're working toward. We will ask provocative questions to understand better what you want out of it. And we will provide another lens and more perspective into what you're doing to help you refine some of your ideas. So we're going to start out with just questions. I've created a Jamboard, of course, because I don't really know how to use any other EdTech tools at this point. I've created a Jamboard, and each frame has the name of the group or individual and just a very short summary of what they are hoping to do. Before we start, I'd like for you guys to go in, take a look at the little summaries and try to add one question to 2 frames if you can. Okay, so we're going to take about 5 minutes to just do that. Let me get you the link to the Jamboard. Rachel, why didn't you put it in your notes? Come on, girl. Okay, here we go. Here it comes. Voila. Okay, that's the Jamboard. So if you guys want to hop in and try to add some questions. So just look at the content area that they're focused on, or the tech tool they're using, or what they're trying to do, and add a question to 2 frames. 1 question to 2 frames. Have any volunteers? I put the frames in order. I hope that didn't give anybody anxiety. You guys can go in any order you want. I'm going to take volunteers, but I just put them in whatever order. So before we do that, oh yeah, thank you, Jana. I want to show you guys, I did add those tips to our slides from today that I'll post in the Moodle. So the tips regarding the email, they're right after that lesson learned of reaching out to content providers. So they're just some bullets on slide 8, just so you know they're in the slides if you need to reference them later. Okay, great. So let's get into our updates. Each team or individual, depending on how you were working, is going to get 5 minutes to talk about their plans so far. You don't need to be, presenting and talking that whole time. You can take some time to get questions, and this is intended to be a conversation. So, kind of give us a summary, and then people may have questions that they want to get more clarification on before they add feedback to the Jamboard. So the way it will work is you guys are going to give us your update. Other people might unmute or put more questions in the chat, and we can take that 5 minutes so that everybody has a clear understanding of the project and the outcomes. And then people are going to we're going to have some time at the end of each presentation to add to the Jamboard some things that you think they should think about and some things that you think are really great and exciting about their project. So keep in mind that they are not going to respond to those things right now. They're going to have time at the end of today's session to discuss that with their group, or to think about it individually and think about, consider the things that you have added to their jam. So you're not going to get an immediate response on those questions. Okay, so let's be sure to listen and take the time and give them our attention to really understand the context of their project and what outcomes that they're hoping for. Let's ask questions if we need clarification on something, and let's add some things to consider and some things that excite you about the project in the Jamboard for them to think about once they go into a breakout room later in our session today. Okay, any questions? Oh, and I gave some things that might include. So if you have ideas for their project, you could add them in things to consider. If you see opportunities to collaborate, definitely add that to the Jamboard. And then if you are excited about the impact, or maybe you think that there's an impact that they haven't considered yet and you want to add that to their wow section, I think those are some ideas of things to put on the frames in Jamboard. Okay, so any volunteers to go first? Any groups or individuals that want to volunteer? Okay, Marlena, I'm seeing your hand up. Awesome. So Marlena will go first. So Marlena, give us
with Consuelo and Angel.
Okay, great.
So we have sorry, Rachel, I didn't mean to cut you off. We have the healthcare for Ella students. One of the questions that I saw was what level, and we're envisioning this to be more advanced students who are in the workforce, so intermediate to advanced. This isn't really suitable for beginner students. However, our goal is to have material that is level for learners who have different levels of content knowledge and reading knowledge, as well as math knowledge. So our ultimate goal is to have routines that integrate vocabulary and concepts within the healthcare realm, reading skills and comprehension, as well as application of the concepts they read about, and also math that is integrated with each section of that content, so that it makes sense, it kind of flows in with those ideas, it's related, and opportunities for students to practice math concepts. So ideally, this would be a whole semester's worth of lessons. What we're aiming to do is create 2 complete lessons that would have pre-reading vocabulary, and then reading from readingforhealthcareworkers.com, and then comprehension questions, and an application activity, and then a math component where learners are being introduced to a math concept that will be relevant to that area in healthcare, and then opportunities for practice with that math concept. so that all of those things, that would be one entire lesson. It may not be within one day, but each one of those lessons will ultimately be, we'll make 2 of those that are fully integrated. And it would be really cool to see this through as we work with the people, with teachers who are actually carrying this out to build lessons for the whole curriculum. And that is what I have. We really wanted to wrap in reading and math skills for healthcare.
Great, thank you for sharing. So we do have some questions. Are you seeing questions in Jamboard, Marlena?
Yes.
Questions about content sources. So I know you're doing reading skills for healthcare, and have you guys decided on something for math?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure, I think Rachel, you commented with this, the career one-stop, just for guidance. Maybe Jeff did, I'm not sure who was commenting. But career one-stop has the competency model just for guidance on what the material is. But I don't know, Consuelo, you and I are kind of working on math together. Khan Academy is certainly an option for supplemental material. I don't know if you would like to create original instruction as well, but I'm thinking that we'll probably create some of those practice opportunities, but then Khan Academy will provide instruction.
Yeah, I was thinking linking videos, and either we can use Khan Academy, or I was thinking other sources and just creating Edpuzzle. So with Edpuzzle, you can create like a short formative assessment. I mean, just for the content, so that. And then we were thinking about adding Google Forms for more like a formative assessment after they read the scenario and then learn the content on the video. So that would be at the end.
Yeah. So the Edpuzzle would be for, present the video, Edpuzzle to provide assessment during, and then there would be a final assessment that would probably have reading and math on it to kind of wrap up that unit.
And someone asked, where will the content be housed? Have you guys made a decision on that?
No, we haven't. I mean, Wakelet looks pretty good, but I don't know as much about it. So that might be a good one just that everyone can access, because I think it might be a little friendlier than I don't know, a document would have guidance. So I'm not sure. We need help with that one.
Okay, great. So other groups, if you guys want to put something on the Jamboard of some ideas you have for that question that they have remaining. Great. And how will you guys organize the content, Marlena? You said it's like going to be a full semester's work. So I'm wondering if you already have a curriculum in mind that you're going to follow that structure, or how is that going to work?
So unfortunately, I don't think Hershey's here today, but she's the one with the most knowledge about that, that healthcare curriculum, the full one. So she best represents that. Okay. So unfortunately, I can't give a great overview of it, but I think we'd probably have to decide, because we've just talked about how in the document, textbooks can't really be used for something that's open like this. I don't know for scope and sequence if we can draw inspiration from textbooks if we're not using yes. material. I mean, scope and sequence seems kind of reasonable, and looking at standards as well and trying to kind of draw from that is likely what we're going to do, but we need to talk a little more about that.
I've definitely drawn inspiration from scope and sequence before. Jeff, did you have something to add? Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, so did we get all the questions here? Is this for all levels of Ella? Are you guys thinking of a specific level to do this?
No, I think there'd probably have to be a cutoff with like upper intermediate to advanced, because these have to be students who can kind of be workforce ready. This is already like English for specific purposes, which requires higher level of basic proficiency. So there would probably be a cutoff for like upper half of intermediate and above.
Okay, great. And then what type of training will be needed? This might be TBD too, if you haven't decided tools, but do you have ideas of what kind of training you might provide?
Well, we know that we'll be doing training with Google tools. I mean, specifically Google Forms and Jamboard, and then Edpuzzle as well. We'd have to do training with instructors. I think training just on navigating the reading for healthcare workers, because if instructors are going to go further and create their own routines using the basic structure, then they would want to know how to navigate that. But I think, yeah, those, and I know Hershey is using Quizlet and has things set up on there. So actually the training would be a little lighter on that, given that we have sets made.
Oh, great.
So I will need to look at the finer details of how many she has. I know she shared at least one that is fully made, because that's a tool she's already used. So the training, I feel like, will be lighter there, because it's more, if you want to make a new set with new content, you at least have a template to work from. So those, and then I think, I'm not sure where we're at with Flippity, because I think we're kind of covering Flippity and Jamboard, they overlap quite a bit in our needs. So I think the determiner will be whether they work well with mobile, and I actually don't know well with Flippity, so I need to test it. But I'm thinking, to make it easier, if we're going to use Google Forms, we'll probably do Jamboard, just to keep those two things closer. And Edpuzzle, yeah, I already mentioned it. We'll have to do some training on that, but
Great.
none of these are too terribly hard, as long as instructors have support and have ways to learn and watch how to do it.
Cool. Okay, sounds great. It definitely went over 5 minutes, but whatever. No, not your fault. It's my fault too. Okay, great. Thank you guys so much for sharing. Everybody, please be sure to get into frame 2 and add some things for this group to consider and some of the wows of their project. So I think there's a lot of wows. It's very exciting. Okay, who's next? Who wants to go next? Come on, volunteers. I wonder if we could hear from one of our individual participants who are leading charge solo. Those brave souls. Oh, yay, Mario. Okay, great.
I'll take a stab at it.
Thanks.
Wow. I didn't know I was doing a presentation today. I didn't prepare anything. The dog ate my homework.
No,
Anyways,
you're not doing a presentation, just a little update, not a presentation.
Okay. All right. That makes me feel a lot better. Okay, so I'm working on this project. I'm the curator, because right now I'm alone, but I'm hoping to recruit some staff members here at my school to further expand this project. You know, once the class is over, hopefully I want to continue and make it better and better with time. So it's a curation project focusing on my math students. I was thinking, I had them in mind the whole time. And specifically, we had been working on fractions, and I said, okay, well, I can use this project to help them get further instruction or further practice with fractions outside of class. So I said, okay, maybe I can find a link or a website that they can use that would be easy for them to use. And I did find this website, Common Core Sheets, where they have all this kinds of math activities, worksheets that they can download, print, or they can simply view them on the website. I don't know if they are in order by standard or not, but maybe they could be put in order by standard, or I can put that in order by standard later on. So the slides, I was using Google Slides. I was originally using that Jamboard, but I found out at the very end that you can't put any links to that. So, you know, you can't click on the Jamboard to a link. So I use Google Slides instead, so you can add links, hyperlink the page, did that. The slide is basically just basic instructions on how to, you know, do this, how the student can go in, get to the page, find the resource they need, and print it out or just work on it online. I know it sounds very overly simplistic now that I heard Marlena there with their huge project they're working on compared to mine. That's about it. So it's basically a link to this resource, and in the Google slide, just instructions on how to get there. The instructions could be for both students and teachers alike. And I also hopefully, when I'm ready to present this to my staff in some kind of professional development meeting, they can go on and use it with their students. But I would first train them, of course, on how to use the resource.
That's great, Mario. Okay, we have some questions. Someone put, are the slides for the teacher or for the learner, which I think you said either, right?
Yes, either of them could just, once, I don't know if we're ever going to see the links today in smaller groups, but yeah, it's easy. It's just basic 2 or 3 steps instructions, and the teacher and the student can both look at that and go to the source from there.
Great. Another question, will the slides include formative assessments to test student knowledge?
No, that was not my goal for this, so I didn't even think about that. It's just not in there.
Okay. Do the worksheets include support material for learners struggling with concepts?
I was hoping to expand. When I say expand this, of course there's ways to add more slides, right? And in another slide, maybe add something, maybe a Khan Academy video to follow that fractions resource to help them learn more if they don't have the concept down yet.
Yeah, and it sounds like this is a way for them, right? Like, so your idea is that you've taught fractions and they've learned
Yes.
fractions, right? And then they have something else to do, more practice to
More
do.
practice. And another thing I had in mind is, okay, we're on this virtual world now. A lot of students may not be able to learn virtually as well. So them being able to print out this, if they have some kind of printer at home, I think that would be helpful for those students that learn by, writing and stuff like that.
Mhm. Yeah, we talked about that, which is kind of interesting, right? Because some students do love to have that physical copy, right? But then others maybe don't have a printer, and so they want to do it digitally. So that's kind of interesting, to have the different mediums. And somebody asked, will the worksheets be accessible through various mediums, which they are on the site, right, Mario?
Yes,
Option.
yes. They are PDF with the answers to them. So they can print them without the answers or with the answers. That's just how the website is designed. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping with that introduction to that website, there's a plethora of other subject areas that they can access once they know how to get in and manipulate or maneuver themselves through the website.
Mhm. And then Mario, one last question on here says, how or will you group them? So do you plan to group slides or to have sections within the deck, or what are you thinking for organizing them?
Right, I'm hoping to group them probably maybe by standard, yeah.
Okay. Any other questions for Mario, guys? I'm seeing a little bit of a math synthesis here. I almost wonder if healthcare group could benefit from this math content and see where there's a crossover to taking some of the Common Core worksheet and putting it
Yeah, absolutely.
in
Absolutely.
your collections.
I would love to collaborate on that.
Cool. Okay, great.
We'll talk later, Marlena.
Thank you, Mario. Okay, who's next? Who would like to go next? Please be sure to go to Mario's project. He's on frame 3, so add some considerations for him and some of the wows of his project on frame 3. And do we have a volunteer to go next? Nicole, yay.
Okay, my project is kind of missing a leg and an arm. So as much feedback as I can get, I really appreciate that, because sometimes I feel pretty lost on this. So my aim is to develop a hub, if you will, to house all of the content for beginning, intermediate, and advanced content for ELA students that is scaffolded for workforce skills, so that eventually it will build them up to work to take the ACRC, which is the Arizona Career Readiness Credential. And that kind of would support our IET programs as far as getting credentials and stuff like that. And so that's my aim. I think it's kind of evolving to be more instructor facing than it is student, where instructors can just get their resources from there. And these resources can be adapted for virtual instruction or in-person in-class instruction.
Okay, Nicole, we have some questions. Will the resources indicate how much training / advanced knowledge instructors need?
I can definitely put that in there.
We should move that to the second column. What is ACRC is a question we have.
It's the Arizona Career Readiness Credential, and it's offered through Arizona Department of Economic Security, I think it is. And it's where students can get a credential stating that they're competent in the following areas with like applied math, reading for information, professionalism, workforce skills. And I'm kind of like focusing more on that workforce skills end, but I know they need to take all of the subject areas to get the credentials. So I would need to integrate also like math, reading, and writing content.
Cool. Any other questions for Nicole? Let's see, we have comments. Nicole, I know you did a little Wakelet mock-up. I'm wondering if you might want to share that so people can kind of see.
Yes, let me get to Wakelet and log in.
Actually, I might have it open. Let me look. You know, I have it open. You want me to share?
Sure.
Okay. Okay. I'll let you just kind of talk through the idea here.
So I have this general idea of how I want to categorize by beginning, intermediate, and advanced, and then additional resources to support students or to support instructors so they can help their students. But like on the beginning column, it's a very instructor facing, because you have the facilitator guide and some in-class activities. And then on Bow Valley College, I found a great resource for like intermediate students that has an interactive textbook if the instructor wanted to kind of use stuff from that. And then over on additional resources, I did put the ACRC link so that was available along with like other, Job Corps and ONET, so that we could explore, our career pathways and workforce requirements and stuff like that.
Cool.
Nicole, that looks great. I really like this. If I were an instructor receiving this, I'd be really, really happy.
Awesome. Okay, thanks, Nicole. If you guys have any considerations for Nicole or any wows to add to her frame, she's on frame 1. And Jeff is sharing in the chat our friend colleague Mary Gaston, who is running for Region 2 COABE representative. Vote for Mary Gaston, vote for Mary Gaston. She works in South Carolina, and they created some contextualized lessons for different occupations too. So maybe click on that and see what they did as an idea. Awesome. Thanks, Nicole. Okay, I think we have one more, right? We've got the anonymous badgers. Badgers, are you here?
No, they're
Okay,
not.
so I guess I'm on. Oh, Janet, you're going to take it?
No, I didn't see you, and I was like, we already nominated Kathy, so.
I did that first, though. I was the first one with it.
Badgers are on frame 4, just so everybody knows, frame 4.
Okay, so what our project is we wanted to do graphs and charts and visual data and making it adult friendly, because so much of the GED in different areas, you need to have charts and graphs and all that visual data understanding. We wanted to have it in one place for instructors. So we found this slow reveal graphs, which trains the students or helps instruct the students on how to read a graph or visual data. And that was sort of our jumping off point. From there, we take that and the training and then link it to some type of content material, whether it's science or social studies. And our big idea would be to have a variety of different content that a teacher could go to. So if they're the social studies teacher, they can present that type of graph, then go to the social studies graph. And we have Google Forms where the student can also do it all by themselves and go through there and answer the questions. From there, we took it one more step and we want to link it not only with the graphs, but with like additional readings to make it a more complete lesson. We are doing, Kimberly did an excellent job creating a Google slide platform where a teacher could take this or a student could take it and scroll through and has all the links in there. And then we have compartmentalized everything in a Google Sheets so that if you just want one area or just two components of it, you can also go to that Google Sheet and just click on the parts that you would like to have or you would like to use. I think that's kind of the gist of everything that we're doing. I know I missed a lot of it, but that's kind of that big idea there. And that's the Google Slides that we have that Kimberly created for us and that we will use as a template. And then we do have templates for each of the areas that we wanted. And that's sort of where we're at now is we have just created templates and thinking over where do we need additional ones and how do they look.
This is cool. Any questions, you guys, for them? If you added a question to the frame and you haven't heard the answer yet, go ahead and unmute. It's cool. I want to click on this. Okay, I'll read off some of the questions. Are you going to include videos for the graph?
Yes. No, the graphs are in slide decks, and that's where we have to go and reach out to slow reveal graphs and make sure that we can use their slide decks. The graphs aren't on video. But I'm sure there's at some point in time, if we have something that would be applicable to one of them, that we could add that into the additional resources.
Okay, is it mobile friendly? I think your slides look awesome and very mobile friendly. Is everything you guys creating, are you thinking about that?
Yeah, we looking into that, trying to get the framework, I guess, at this point in time, and then moving into those next components. But there should be no reason why they wouldn't be able to do it on their phones.
Great. And this is a good one. Will teachers or learners need training on slow reveal graphs? I think that's a great idea. Like, obviously you could train them on the tools, but I think also this strategy of using slow reveal graphs, will you be incorporating that in the training?
That's really something that we could discuss when we reach out to slow reveal graphs. They actually, sorry about that. They actually have something on their website about having people give them information. So they're always asking for additional contributions to their website too. So that could be something we do. But they, in their slow reveal graphs on their slides, a lot of times they include the questions that they think should be asked for that particular slide.
Cool. All right, great. Thank you guys for sharing.
I have a quick question. Someone has a suggestion about putting the slides into frames. Like frames, like a Google Jamboard frame. I like the idea of whatever it is, not going back and forth, but I'm just not sure what kind of frames.
That was me.
Oh. You mean put it in a
Yeah,
Jamboard?
I was thinking those great slides that you have like as a
Uh-huh.
frame in Jamboard. So instead of having to click over, because it seems like they have a lot of Jamboard activities, maybe they
Oh.
click just to the next frame to do the activity into the next frame.
Oh.
Just
But
gonna-
can we put a link? We still can't put a
Can't
link
link,
into a
right,
Jamboard,
can't
right?
link. No.
Hmm.
So yeah, I'm not sure what all is included. If there are links to other stuff, obviously you wouldn't be able to do that. But if it's just
Yeah.
linking to Jamboard activities, maybe it's a good progression for them to
Mhm.
just work in there.
Yeah,
It's an idea.
I like it. We'll talk about it. Thank you.
Just a little Jamboard junkie over here. No big deal. All right, guys, let's take some time. I want to give first Karina some time to talk about how some of these projects might align with Arizona State initiatives. And I want to give you guys some time. We're running short on working together in your groups and looking at some of the considerations. So Karina, go ahead.
Thank you. I will make this quick. Let me share the right thing. All right, can you see my slides and hear me? Awesome. So as you guys move forward in planning for your EdTech makerspaces, we wanted to remind you to keep a few things in mind. And then just going, and this is all repetitive of what you already know, I'm fully aware of that. Just what the goals of the makerspace are. So some of them include reusability, filling a greater need. So for statewide use, even nationwide use, and then also sharing the load so that it's not all one person doing the work. So with that in mind, how do we accomplish this? And I just wanted to propose a few things for you. And then of course, if you have questions, always feel free to reach out. So some ways to foster the reusability and fill the statewide need would be to make it reportable for proxy hours. So that could be through either the learner mastery model or the teacher verification model. So you might want to think through as you're planning and developing how they might fit into either of these models. So for example, the learner mastery model, if you're not familiar with it, it assigns a fixed number of proxy hours once the learner passes a test, basically. So in order to be approved for this, as we did with the reading skills for today's adults, we approved those for learner mastery model because they met this criteria here on the right. If you wanted to move forward with the learner mastery model, what we recommend doing is submitting a sample, maybe one lesson that's going to be kind of the structure of the whole EdTech makerspace. So we have an idea of what it's going to look like. And of course, it would include the content, an assessment that we can count for that 70% or determine the mastery, and then include the proposed time allotment for proxy hours and a justification for that. And so kind of like Jeff said at the beginning, do one and then we can talk about it. And if it's approved, then you can copy that for the rest of your lessons. So that's definitely one way to make this reusable and fill a statewide need. And the other option, and this one is a little, I'm sure if you're familiar with both of these models, you know that the learner mastery is much less teacher intensive, and it would be less work for the project developers because they wouldn't have to submit 40 different things potentially. It's just one submission. So with the teacher verification model, we assign a predetermined number of proxy hours for each assignment based on whether the teacher determines that the learner completed the assignment. So if you wanted to go this route for your projects, everyone would first need to become TVM certified, which I think most of you are. And if not, you just have to go through a blended learning course. It's available on the EMS. It is asynchronous, so you can do it at your own pace. And then let me move these heads here. And then, oops, sorry. You would submit a form for each lesson into the lesson repository for this. So if, again, I'm sure you all are familiar, but if you're not, this one is more teacher intensive because you have to submit a form for each of the lessons. Whereas with the learner mastery model, you submit that one template, as long as the rest of the content follows that template, then it's fixed. That's it. So these are two things to consider as far as the reusability and filling that statewide need. The other thing is to share the load. So it sounds like you guys already have that in mind, or the recruitment of teachers in your programs and that sort of thing. But and again, this is also repetitive. I'm sorry, Rachel. You already said this. There are different strengths. So maybe you have people in mind that might be great at curation. There might be some that are great at creation. So just kind of thinking about that when it comes to sharing the load, because we have a shared need, we can share the work, right? So some ideas that we have for you all in recruiting, we can help with that. We here at the state office, so we can advertise it in Shop Talk. I'm not sure if you all are familiar, but every other month we have a webinar with your program administrators, and we kind of give them updates and that sort of thing. So some of you who said that you're here because of your administrator, they probably heard about this course during Shop Talk. So we're happy to share some projects or some needs for participation during that Shop Talk time. So just let us know what you want us to share, and we can do that. Also, I'm sure you're also familiar with First Friday emails. So that's something we could advertise there. We can put a call for teachers interested in, developing healthcare lessons, or, whatever the need is. We can advertise that there. Just send us an email with the information you want, and maybe like a Google form where they can reach out to you, or, some kind of way to get in touch with you. And then when it comes to sharing your developments and training, we can get you to do a T&T session, Teachers in Technology session. You can present at the Institute that we have every year in September. So we are happy to help with the share the load aspect of it. If you all just communicate with us, we have the aesedtech@azed.gov email address that you can reach out to. You can also always reach out to me directly, or Marilyn as well. So just some food for thought.
Awesome. Thanks, Karina.
No problem.
So just let's just pretend that Karina added that to the second column of all your frames, something to think about. And I put in the chat too that it can really take a lot of time to try and find enough makers for your project, depending on the size of it. So these are great opportunities to spread the word. All right, so let's take some time for you guys to get into groups and work together. Yeah. Okay, we got 1 minute here. Let me wrap this up. Next steps. So we have finished 3 and 4. I put the exit tickets into our Moodle. So if you could fill out the exit tickets, and then start reading section 5, the last section of the guide, and completing the workbook activities. This next section is all about evaluating your work and sharing it. So it's going toward the end of your project and looking ahead into how you're going to wrap things up. Actually, I wanted to share too that we are doing a showcase for an EdTech Makerspace project on March 18th. We just wrapped up this huge digital skills curation project, and we're showcasing the additional 800 resources that have been curated into our digital skills library. So I'm going to put the link to register there for you guys. It might be helpful to see the showcase, and both for EdTech Makerspace project planning, but also just for digital skills, right? If you're ever having to integrate digital skills into your teaching, this would be a great resource to use. So yes, that's the next step is complete section 5 and start making a plan for how you will execute your EdTech Makerspace project, and what are the big steps for you beyond completing this course on February 11th. What are the steps after that? We are putting plans together for a time for everybody to share out. I'm just trying to figure out the best timeline for that, so that there's a little bit more development and something to share in regards to updating us on your project. And that will be optional. You don't have to showcase anything, but we would love to see kind of where this all led. So if you have questions, of course, just reach out to me on our Moodle or email me. And I am here for you guys. Again, the final due date for workbooks and work in the Moodle is February 11th. I keep saying February, I'm sorry, March 11th. Janet is clapping. Actually, she's raising her hand. Okay, we're not getting claps today. Go ahead, Janet.